Our first panel is comprised of refuseniks and activists, and it will situate us in the place where the walls have ears, as I've mentioned. The Wende Museum, there is a thread that runs through all of our exhibitions and programs, and that is the fact that there is a witness to creativity and innovation that rises and thrives in systems of oppression and in difficult times. And those who are on this panel this morning, this first panel, refuseniks and activists, are testament to this fact. And it is a great gift that you are all here today. The first panel will be moderated by Dr. Shaul Kelner, who visits us from Nashville, Tennessee, where he teaches sociology and Jewish studies at Vanderbilt University. I want to give a shout out because Shaul has written a book, A Cold War Exodus, How American Activists Mobilized to Free Soviet Jews, and it just won the National Jewish Book Prize. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Shaul Kelner and the panelists to the stage.
Good morning and thank you and welcome. And this is Voices of Defiance. We are going to hear Voices of Defiance. As the first panel for the morning, we're also setting up what we're going to hear next. And we're going to be hearing voices from the Soviet Union, but the Voices of Defiance also included voices from the United States and around the world. We'll hear that later as well. This is an archive, and archives preserve, as we heard yesterday from the archivists here, they preserve documents, and they also allow researchers and others to reconstruct a history and to study from these documents. But when we're trying to reconstruct a history and we're thinking about something collective, it's really important to remember that each of these documents was produced by people. And the documents that we're going to be hearing more about later today are documents that were produced by and that tell the stories of refuseniks, of activists, of people like our distinguished panel here. We have Gennady Estraikh, we have Marina Furman, and we have Sasha Smukler. Their bios are in the booklet, and I'm not going to recite them here because I'm going to ask them to tell their stories. But I do want to say, because it's not necessarily in the bios themselves, that after their stories in the Soviet Union, they went on to distinguished careers in business and philanthropy, in nonprofit work, and in academia. We're going to be looking at an earlier part in their lives, and it's really a pleasure to be here and to help amplify their stories. So thank you and welcome. Let me ask you first, how and why did you get involved in activism in the Soviet Union, and why did you try to leave? And if we can start, we'll start with Gennady and we'll move in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. And you know, a couple of years ago, my wife and I were asked to commit to paper our experience, simply to write why. And one of the questions was why, yes. And we couldn't recall actually what really triggered it. And I believe after a while, I was of course annoyed. Yeah, something was supposed to happen. Yeah, and after a while, I realized that it was somewhere hanging in the air. It was simply you have to, otherwise you are a fool. Yeah, at least in our surroundings. What is also important, and what it supports, I believe, this fact that it was not something as a result of an event, but a result of what was happening in the environment, that in the very difficult this process of assembling the pile of documents for the application, it was important to have permissions of our parents. Without the official permission given by our parents, we couldn't even apply for immigration. 3 of our parents were members of the Communist Party. My father-in-law was even trained. He had 2 higher educations, and one of them was an education at the highest university for training party functionaries. My father, during the war, was a political commissar during the entire war, and then for a couple of years in the Soviet army stationed in East Germany, and a communist. They never said a word against our application. They just went, they committed it once again to paper. They went to the office where they were supposed to get a signature and a stamp confirming that, and they did it. So it was somehow handy. At the same time, I have to mention, and this maybe I am not as a witness, but as a historian, that it would be wrong to see it as a reflection of the fact that every Soviet Jew wanted to immigrate at that time. This was not the case. This was a case in our maybe environment, but it wasn't generally a case, because at the same time, a significant number of people were quite fine, doing fine. You know, it is, I always quote the following, statistics is important here, that in the process of this history of emigration, at the same time, there's a statistics of departures here, successful or not successful here, but there's also a statistics of the Jewish membership in the Communist Party. And it continued to grow until the end of the Soviet Union. By the end of the Soviet Union, 20% of all adult Soviet Jews were members of the Communist Party. You can't find any other ethnic group in the Soviet Union with anything even close to this 20%. And of course, in many cases, it was cynical because it opened some, or potentially could open some doors for promotion and so on. But it also meant that people who admitted to the party considered this person reliable, considered this person Soviet enough to be, in the party. So it was, in my coming back to the answer, it was something. It was everyone was sitting, no, not really, but metaphorically, sitting on suitcases. We decided also to buy a few suitcases. Yeah.
Thank you, Marina.
As a Jewish woman, I have to get off topic and and just say that I want to thank Sasha and Justin and Robin family for having chutzpah to think that people will come to this symposium and listen to a day of talks, which I thought was gone forever. So this is absolutely amazing, and thank you. And I also believe that KGB majorly interfered, because first they set LA on fire. It didn't work. All my friends say, "You're still coming LA, there are fires, the air quality is horrible." I said, "We're going to talk about KGB, so the air quality is going to scare us." And then when it didn't work, it didn't rain in LA since May, and the reception is outside after. Of course, it had to rain. But nonetheless, we're here. And I just want to mention an amazing people in this audience, Molat family and Brodsky, Vani and Frank Brodsky, without whom we would not be sitting here. My husband Lev, who should be a speaker, but he didn't have a choice because he married a very persistent Jewish woman. And as far as what made me want to leave, I had very interesting family history. My grandfather was from France. I grew up in Kyiv, and I was 5 foot tall, curly hair girl who did not fit in Ukrainian crowd of 5'7", and I had photographic memory, and I was a pariah in my school. And the teacher explained my extraordinary abilities by the fact the Jews drank blood. They didn't say Christian because Christianity was forbidden also, You know, every chance she had, she mentioned that Jews were evil. And it wasn't like that everywhere. It wasn't like that in Leningrad, but in Kyiv, in my neighborhood, which was very, very lower middle class neighborhood, that was, you know, absolutely allowed. And when my mother went to complain to the principal said to her to shut up and stop bad mouthing amazing teachers. At the age of 12, my grandfather told me the story of Masada and the notion that you can die as a free person versus living as a slave entered my brain and never left. And I was willing to die for my freedom and for being Jewish. I had no idea what it meant. When I met my husband Leningrad and he told me he was a religious Jew, I had no idea what it meant. And he was wearing this weird thing on his head. And, you know, so now he's fashionably transitioned to a hat.
I can almost buy, no problem.
I would not, I married him in a week because he was about to be arrested. But I had no idea what it meant to be an observant Jew. But it's, I think those of us who dared to fight this evil, evil empire, who through Stalin time, through prosecution, according to their statistics, I think killed 20 million innocent people. Again, to have a chutzpah to say, I'm not afraid of you. It's this incredibly liberating feeling. And that's why 1.7 Jews left USSR. And it always starts with mishuganers like Ben Gurion, like Golda Meir, who believe that miracles are possible. And they are.
Sorry.
Yes, I was thinking that it's extremely important to explain all of you and where we came from and how we end up participating in a movement which also supported behind the Iron Curtain and basically gave us a freedom eventually. And I was born and grew up in a communal apartment in the industrial part of Moscow, right across the river from Kremlin, in a huge, gigantic apartment building, which was built by Stalin for the families of the nuclear scientists who've been involved in the Russian atomic bomb or nuclear programs. And they've just mentioned about his relatives. Yes, I remember we had a schedule how and when we can use the bathroom and toilet. And for the children in our apartment, we were allowed to take shower only once a week. So I grew up in this apartment with parents who were hardline communists, and they believed in what they were doing. I had no idea that I'm a Jewish boy until I came to my, in 1967, I came to my soccer coach at school and asked him to sign me up for the soccer team. And he said, look, kid, did you see yourself in the mirror? I said, yes. Do you see you are a red-haired Jew? And the Jews are not playing in my soccer team. Go to the chess club. That's your place. Fast forward in 1973, end of October, I came to school and there was a crowd of senior kids staying in front of the school. And they said to me, do you know that Israel just beat up our Arab friends? And we support them. So from now on, you will be responsible for that. And you will be shining our shoes every day before coming into the school. The guy who was leading that group was staying in front of me. He was very tall and I spit in his face. I was beaten up And probably a few days later, I woke up in the ICU unit in the hospital, and my mom was sitting next to me, and she said, "Tell me what's happened with you." And I told her a story. "Mom, how can I come back to that school after they did to me?" And mom told me, "Listen, you have to understand, you have to become a communist. We will build a society which will be equal to everybody. And one day you will understand there will be no Jews, no Russians, no Ukrainians, no Tajiks, no Uzbeks in the passports. There will be no stamp, and everybody will be equal, and you will live in a society which is our dream. Just be a strong communist, join the Young Komsomol, Young Communist League, and try to change that world and make it better." Fast forward, in 1974, I came to the big construction site. I saw the kids sitting around the fire pit, drinking vodka and smoking. There was a street gang, very famous in my district, which controlled my district. I came to the leader of that group, his name was Osipov, and I said, "Listen, they beat me up every month. I need you to teach me how to defend myself." He said, "Come on, you're a famous red-haired Jew. Who is going to defend you? Why are you here?" I said, "Listen, if you will defend me and you will teach me how to fight, I will teach you how to make money legally." So after that, fast forward, first month in the university, there was a crowd of people in the stadium when they could congratulate the class of 1982. The meeting itself was in 1977. Probably 5,000 students sitting in a conference hall and in that small stadium. And suddenly professor of math saying, "Now we would like to call a group of Jews who join our school and will become our students, and we want them to condemn Israel. Because if they want to be members of our society and our group, they have to be on the stage right here and condemn what Israel done with our brothers in Palestine and Arab countries." And I am, as a member of Soviet Anti-Zionist Committee, my name is Sign Notkin. I will call a group of Jewish kids who just joined our school. And my name came up, and I was staying on the stage with a group of other kids. And I seen in front of me the huge audience, and there were lots of students from Palestine, from other Arab countries. In that time in Soviet Union, they all came to the universities and schools. And I remember that I was shaking and my stomach got upset. And I saw my friend who was staying next to me and he peed in his pants. And because we needed to condemn Israel. And just before a few days before that, my friend Arkady Shapiro, who will be here tonight, gave me a book, Exodus, and I just finished it. And I came to microphone and I said, "Am Israel High." They didn't understand what it meant, but that was my entrance to the movement. After that, my fear, which was always living inside of me, that I'm a Jew and I'm a different and I'm a second-class person and I'm supposed to be a communist, and I had no idea what communism is. In that minute, I lost that fear. And after that, I become a member of the movement which you're talking about. That's an absolutely typical story. I don't know if my friends went through the same, but trust me, in the area where I lived in Moscow, there are everywhere, everybody went through the same or similar things.
So let me ask, if everyone's going through the same or similar things, you can go through something alone, or you can go through something together. How did you find each other? How did you find support? How did you build community so that you were not just facing this as individuals on your own?
My family story is I grew up in a family that the main language in our family was Yiddish. Because before the Second World War, my parents and in general my grandparents and so on, they lived in a Jewish national district. It's quite well known, the story of Birobidzhan, or in general, the existence of Birobidzhan. But in addition to Birobidzhan, in the European part of the Soviet Union, there were 5 national Jewish districts in which Yiddish was essentially the main language, and quite often non-Jews Yiddish schools were the only schools in the villages, actually. So my family lived there. My father graduated from a university training teachers for Yiddish schools, and my mother graduated from a college in Yiddish. My parents were very religious. My grandfather was a Shaul. So in my case, there was no moment of revelation, I am Jewish. Well, I was Jewish, yes, from the very beginning, yes, the language and so on. And when I moved to, I started reading in Yiddish. My parents actually gave me, you know, the letters and so on, the language I knew, and I developed it more in the process of reading. So after applying for immigration, very soon, I joined a group, exactly what, yeah, together. It was a group that was organized in 1981. And the name of the group was the Jewish Historical and Ethnographical Commission. Sounds quite bombastic, yeah. In the reality, we would come together actually in this kitchen, that kitchen, you know, this apartment. In our case, in the Soviet Union, you visited the Soviet Union, you know, the conditions of the apartments. Kitchen was quite important here. In any case, and it was a mixed group. It was a group of really scholars in the field, historians and so on, but importantly, there were no places officially dealing with Jewish history or dealing with Jewish ethnography or some other things here. And we somehow created an ivory tower actually in the movement, yes, for people who later, like in my case, quite a few became professors in various places. Some of them stayed, just a couple stayed in the former Soviet Union, but the majority finally emigrated. And it was what is really, I understood it later, this period of time being a refusenik, to me, it was maybe one of the happiest periods in my life. And I was listening to your story, that it was really something that moved you, they changed you. And I believe this period changed me, and it changed quite a few people around me. I'm pretty sure that it changed all of us, yes? Quite a few of us changed our professions. I was initially trained, my first degree was in electronics, that actually helped me to survive in this business of being refusing. Yeah. But I became, in the meantime, I changed it and was invited to go to Oxford and so on. Yeah. But coming back to this group, it helped me. It really helped me. It also, what was importantly, yesterday we saw this wonderful film. I liked it very much, actually. And it was mentioned that it would be important to show this film to the younger generation of kids from the former Soviet Union. I believe not only to the younger generation. It would be important to show to my generation. I know it as a historian, and somehow, but we didn't know it. I believe that all the people shown in the film were much better known abroad than in the Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, there was no how by trying to find a radio station that at that time was available. Yeah, the New York Times was not really available. Yeah, so it was important in our case. There was no centralized some sources of information. There were rumors. Rumors was endless every day. A new rumor. Yeah, people believe in the rumors. But it was important to have interconnection. We applied, someone else applied, this applied, this applied, and it created a kind of a network. In my case, so it was a double network of my friends, yeah, in the commission, and the network of people in similar situations. This was important. Thank you.
Marina, Sasha?
So actually, I'm a very good example of what it meant to be a lone fighter or part of the movement. So when I became Refusenik in Kyiv, or you say Kyiv now, I was 19 years old. It was my mother and my grandfather. I was so stunned that we were refused because my mother was a kindergarten teacher and my grandfather was old and blind. It took me a week to gather my wits. And then I did the only thing I knew how to do. I went back to Avir. Avir was the Office of Internal Affairs that gave you the visa or refusal, where people would come in the yard, in the backyard, and wait and talk to one another and give tips of what to take with you. And I went there and I said, who else was refused? And a number of people said, we were, and I said, we have to do something. We have to protest. And they said to me, go away, don't cause trouble. And so I didn't have anyone. I tried to find the very famous Refuseniks in Kyiv. I had no idea where to find them. So I, by myself, started writing letters every day to head of KGB, to head of Office of Internal Affairs, and going back to Avir, going back to that backyard. And I tried to organize people to protest and do something. And people were scared. And the neighbors in our apartment building said to my mother, can you shut up your stupid daughter? She's gonna get all of us in trouble. And especially Jewish people, they were terrified. You have to remember there was Babi Yar in Kyiv. So many people didn't survive. And those who did, they live in constant fear. And I got zero support. I was seen as a troublemaker. And 6 months into my activities, KGB arrested me, took me in the KGB car, took me to the park and beat me up, saying to me, you're young, you're stupid, you don't understand, just say you will stop doing what you're doing and we'll let you go. And you can prove to us you can be a loyal Soviet citizen. And while they were beating me up pretty badly, I managed to gather courage to say no. And that was the most profound, life-changing moment for me because I realized what Masada meant, what it meant to be free inside. And then they had no power over me. And then they locked me in a cell with drunk criminals who were ready to rape me and only didn't rape me because it was a man who protected me. And after that, I realized that we're not gonna make it in Kyiv. Remember, every time I left my apartment, we had no phone. And my mother didn't know if I was gonna come back, and she had no one. She lost everyone in the Holocaust. My father died when I was 7. And just out of mercy for her. And I think that for so many Refuseniks, it's our appearance for real heroes, because they let us keep trying to commit suicide because that's what it was. And they didn't stop us. So we moved to Tbilisi, capital of Russian Soviet Georgia, where I met a group of Refuseniks and started to realize I needed to learn English. So I listened to Voice of America, where I heard the name Furman. And then he came to Tbilisi and told me he was about to be arrested and needed a wife. And I said, great, what a romantic proposal. How can I say no? You know, I would have a possibility of to go to Siberia and be part of the Gulag community. And oh my God, and he had beautiful blue eyes. And when I married Lev and moved to Leningrad, every single day, he had people who came, young people who came to learn Hebrew, who came to eat. He learned how to make good chont. And every single day, we had people like Alan and Shirley and Frank and Bunny come to our apartment to the point where I said to Lev, we just got married. Can we have a moment of privacy? But we made a child very quickly in between political meetings. You know, Daniel Grossman, David was, but I don't know where you are, who was at the time American Vice Consul in Leningrad, was signed our ketubah and brought us our first scotch. And I have to say, you know, I don't know how many of you know this, saw this. This one says Marina Furman Jewish Star. Before they were Armstrong bracelets, before they were hostage bracelet, you guys started the trend. And people would come to us and say, I wear your bracelet. In the beginning, it was just Lev. I was Lev Furman's wife. But when I was 3 months pregnant with our first child, the KGB told us that they were going to murder me in a hospital, which was very easy for them to do when I give birth, unless we give up. And even in Russia, it takes only 9 months to be pregnant. Yeah, go figure. You'd think KGB could make it longer. And in these 6 months, it was the most incredible things. And I told you yesterday, I have a grandson whose name is Zev, and I'll tell him why he's alive. People came twice, 3 times a day to our apartment to say, hang in there, don't give up. Justin, I don't know if you have that picture from the Hadassah magazine. There were articles that said Marina and her baby must not die. Remember, no internet, no emails. In matter of month, there was a tremendous movement in this country that went to the Congress people, to then the senators, to everyone they could find. They wrote letters, they wrote petition. A lot of them were Jewish women that KGB learned their lesson from. And that movement, that solidarity, that love of a fellow Jew saved my life. And so many perish in Holocaust. And it's just one family. But I have amazing 2 kids. One is named Aliyah, who was born in spite of KGB trying to kill us. You, Soviet Jewry movement activists, scared KGB. So I think whatever challenges face us as a Jewish community now, if only we can succeed and teach that lesson of what it means to be a community and a movement and care about fellow Jew, I think we can address every one of them, because you saved my life, you saved my kids. I have grandchildren. I believe, of course, my grandson will be next president of the United States, or you wouldn't be a proper Jewish grandmother. But that was a difference for me. And this movement should be celebrated every day. It should be studied in every school, and not just a school, because this is an example of how grassroots movement can really change history.
Sasha, you were telling us. You were telling us that you went alone to this gang, but later you didn't. You didn't get through this whole thing just on your own. How did you find community? How did you build community? How did you find partners and allies?
Yeah, the life is a strange thing. When I was telling you the story of my childhood, I did mention two important things. Number one, the boy who was whom I spit into the face, and after that they beat me up. His last name was a Russian name, Popov. He successfully lives now in Haifa, and he's a doctor. That's an interesting thing. And that's an example that how many Jews in Soviet Union kept secret that they're Jewish. And that's very important to know about our background. And also Synapkin, who was a professor of math and who was a very active member of anti-Zionist committee in Soviet Union, he died also in Israel. And interestingly, that during my mission, I was there with the group of friends of IDF. I met with his son, who is one of the leading engineer and scientist in Iron Dome. So this is the life, which this is our life. Speaking about how I become involved in the movement, in 1978, I came to Crimean city, a little town, a resort town called Koktebel. And I spent time there, and I was making money playing chess, blind chess, with the people on the beach. Just for fun, they paid me money, and I was playing blindly with several people at the same time, and it was like a circus. Suddenly, I saw three young boys, very athletic, beautiful, handsome, and they proudly wear Magen David on them. So I've seen it, and I was shocked. I was paralyzed. How brave they are just to go on the beach and wearing Magen David. It was impossible to see. Interestingly, that three of them came to my chess desk and said, "Hey, kid, let's play." And they beat me up, really beat me up. One of them was Yulia Edelstein, another one was Yuli Kasharovsky, and the third one, Misha Nekrasov. In that time, they had a secret camp in the mountains where it's called Diburim. Every summer, they organized a camp for Hebrew teachers. So in that moment, I become just a part of them. So I left. They took me to their camp. We've been. Of course, I didn't know a word of Hebrew in that time. Much later, I joined the Hebrew classes with Yulia Edelstein, and that's how I became involved.
Were any of you able to find allies and partners and supporters outside of your Jewish communities?
Do you mean non-Jewish?
Non-Jews.
You know, in my case, the experience was really, this experience comes that such allies, or at least just normal people, existed in significant numbers. When I applied for the immigration, quite often people in charge of the institution or whatever where you are employed made an effort to get rid of you. You have to go. In my case, because as I already mentioned, I was in electronics, so I was not involved in education, because I don't believe that a person who was a teacher or a lecturer at a university could continue to function in this capacity, because this person was already with this tame, yes, somehow ideologically not reliant. I am not sure, I am sure that it was very, and I know that it was very difficult for people who dealt with classified information or something that was classified. In the Soviet Union, classification was almost universal for many things. In my case, this was not a problem. And I was lucky to be in an institution with very decent people, Russian people, with the name, the director was Fedorov, and so on and so forth. They made some efforts, but afterward they gave up. 2 years after my submitting my application, this Fedorov summoned me and told, so what is going on? Are you leaving or you're staying? So that, look, it's not my decision. I don't get, twice they said no. What shall I do? Okay, I'll start promoting you, but when such decision comes, you have to inform me immediately. So he promoted me once, he promoted me the second time, and I was not unique in our institution. There were also a couple of other people who were in a similar situation. Moreover, they employed a couple of people in the status of refusenik. And somehow, again, I was lucky. I didn't face anti-Semitism in an open form during this entire process. People, I was expelled. It was, you know, you had to be. I was still quite young, so I was a member of the Komsomol, young communist. You couldn't apply as a member of the Komsomol. You couldn't apply as a member of the Communist Party. You had to be expelled from the ranks of such. So I was expelled. My wife was expelled. So, and but it was a kind of a ritual. It was more ritual. Yes. And people continued to function. Some maybe created, at least for a while, some distance. It was, I could feel the distance became significant. But otherwise, no. So I can't say that they became my allies. Never happened. But apart from a couple of friends, close friends. But they were really just, I'll repeat, decent people who understood what was going on.
Marina or Sasha, support allies from outside of the Jewish communities?
I didn't have in Soviet Union. I mean, when we moved to Tbilisi, Georgia, and loved the Jews always, and they were wonderful to me. I was severely undernourished when I came there, and they had the feast every day at lunch. They were just good people. I can't say they were allies, but when I was in hospital giving birth to my daughter, and they did try to murder me, the physician who saved my life, doctor in the hospital number 13, couldn't go along and save my life, save life of my daughter. Aliyah was fired immediately from the hospital and exiled from Leningrad. He was not Jewish. And interestingly, we bribed a Jewish doctor to let Lev know should they really try to go ahead with it, and he got scared. And this amazing person saved my life, and unfortunately we were never able to thank him. So I think as far he gave up a lot to save 2 Jewish lives. But I just want to mention the allies in this movement. Many of you probably know of famous Sister Rose, I think from New Jersey. Yeah, who was Catholic nun, correct? And became great friend of Refuseniks of the movement. And she came to visit us. And to me, you know, just understanding how big and deep and widespread the movement is. And here is incredible woman who is not Jewish, traveling to Soviet Union to help us, was incredible. And there were many allies, and Jackson Vanik neither were Jewish. So how do you recruit people who are outside of tribe to believe in your cause? It's another great lesson and example that I think worth documenting, studying, promoting, and telling to everyone.
Yeah, I don't recall, or I don't remember any allies from the society, because since 1978, when I met the friends whom I just mentioned, and they become my mentors and teachers and lifelong friends. I only want to add, yesterday we seen one of the most wonderful documentary about the Refuseniks movements, but these people whom you seen yesterday, it was top of the iceberg because they were ready to sacrifice. They were on the front lines. They were ready to sacrifice their lives. They went to prison. They went to jail. They fight with KGB, and they met with the foreigners. But I was the loyal officer of the movement. I was not known. My first application for immigration was dated August 3rd, 1980. I brought the file to my mom and completely destroyed her, asking to sign my documents. I was 20 years old. Mom refused, saying that she still believed that one day I will understand my mistake and join the Communist Party. Unfortunately, she died in Soviet Union tragically, and never seen me leaving and departing, and she never signed my documents actually. But specifically, I want to mention that I was among other thousands and thousands of people who've been involved in the movement and not having a direct connection. Lately, I already knew about different organizations, Union of Council, National Conference, and I met, but in the time when I already came to the leading group. But before that, we did not meet with foreigners. I was attending Hebrew classes, and I did what the leadership said. And trust me, I know hundreds and hundreds of people who've been involved in doing the job, which was not visible, not only for people who fight for our freedom here, but also for the KGB. There was an organization and a movement, very well organized. We had a network in almost every city in Soviet Union, and there was blood vessels where we delivered samizdat and money. We sponsored and support lawyers of those who've been in jail and help their families, etc., etc. There was a lot. The network was gigantic. And I belong to that part, not the people whom you've seen yesterday on the documentary who were right on the front lines.
So you fought against a situation of institutionalized anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and you made it out. Now we're all living in a situation where anti-Semitism is on the rise, anti-Zionism is becoming institutionalized in certain places. How do you think about your own experience in the Soviet context and what lessons it leads you to think about for Jews in the States or around the world today in our own contexts?
It's once again a difficult question. We live in a completely different situation. First of all, there's internet, and it's a game changer. Look, I was a refusenik, and I received, I remember one day, a postcard to go to the military commissariat. And in the rumors that existed, maybe some remember that it was part of the tricks of the government, to take to it. I came with a letter from my institute that I am, as an engineer, I am fine, but I had applied for immigration. I came, expecting something. The officer was sitting without reading the letter, put it into the file, and said, "Congratulations. Instead of being a lieutenant, I became a senior lieutenant." There was no internet. It was separate, in various places. My wife was expelled from the Komsomol, and after waiting for some years, and our daughter was already in kindergarten, So as a teacher, she found a job. Once again, her employer didn't know that her history of being expelled and so on. So this is quite a different story. Second, anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union, people involved in anti-Semitism, let's put it, especially anti-Semitism, they didn't have a chance to create organizations, at least of any significance, because the KGB hated any organizations, Jewish, non-Jewish, even anti-Semitic or whatever, any organization, any form of civil society. It was important to suppress from the early day after the Bolshevik Revolution. This is one of the styles. Nowadays, we read about organization on a campus, organization not on a campus, and it is different. I don't remember after 1967, some, in my case, open expressions of anti-Semitism. It was, people were surprised, shocked, in a different way, shocked. A Jewish shock and a non-Jewish shock, whatever. So this is what I believe makes it very, very different here.
We're going to move to questions unless there's something that either of you want to add to that.
Let's stick to the timeline.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's be merciful
Okay.
to our audiences.
Right. So we're going to open it to questions. And do we have microphones going around? All right.
Please raise your hand if you're.
I have a question for Professor Estraikh. You're now a professor at NYU. What is that like as a Refusenik to watch what's happening at NYU to Jewish students?
First of all, I am emeritus, luckily, from September. Yeah, but still, I had a chance to see something. What can I say? Usually disappointing. Here, and what was going on and their reaction. I believe that at NYU, the leadership was less confused than at some other institutions. Somehow it was immediately organized. We had meetings, something, and it took some, how shall I put, localized forms rather than the forms. NYU is lucky not to have a square. It is important for an event to have a square. Like at Columbia University, they have a square. NYU has a square, Washington Square, but it's not the square of the university. It's the responsibility of the city. So I believe this is also somehow played a role in the situation.
Okay, thank you. Are there more questions? Over there.
Oh, excellent presentation. I have two very different questions. One is yesterday when we saw the documentary, one of the most intriguing parts was listening to former president of the USSR, Gorbachev, after he no longer was president, reminiscing and being asked questions about the Soviet Jewry movement. And I just wondered if you could speak on what is Gorbachev's legacy with regard to this? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Because it was really unclear from the answers he gave. And my second one is, now in Putin's Russia, the Jews that remain there, what do you see the future of those that are still staying?
I'll answer. I live with the appreciation to Gorbachev, because without him, we probably will die in a KGB prison, and the Soviet Union will be the same closed country. I met with Gorbachev several times after the collapse of Soviet Union, and we had a discussion about, of course, Jewish activity and Jewish immigration. Laura yesterday mentioned that he was strange and he didn't even remember Sharansky, etc. Probably that because of the interview, I came to him. Big. We had a friend and a source of information in the Central Committee of CPSU, and I have to give him a tribute because he recently died. Mark Levin, who is here, he probably know that name, to Markin. Remember? He just passed away. And this person, who was a personal secretary and a speechwriter to Alexander Yakovlev, did a lot to bring a message directly to Gorbachev through Yakovlev about our movement. And Gorbachev perfectly knew what he's doing. He was always regret that there are so many. He thought that the creme de la creme of Russian intelligentsia and the leadership of the science left Russia and Soviet Union, and he thought that Soviet Union or Russia already, because we met after the collapse of Soviet Union, lost a tremendous amount of wealth and yes, and minds and scientific resources. That was his actually mostly was his opinion that we did wrong. We're supposed to treat our people much better because Russia lost so much power and so much strength. But that's all. At the same time, again, without Gorbachev, I probably wouldn't sit here. By the way, I want to ask you a question or remind you, in the day when Gorbachev resigned, I think it was December 19th, 1991, the oil price was $9. If the oil price will be like today, $60, the Soviet Union will exist. And that's very important to understand. They didn't have money to feed people, and that's why, and that's really speed up a collapse of that empire.
And I would just like to add that, in Parashat Noach, it says, "U'aya tzadik bezmano." He was a tzaddik, he was a righteous of his time. And Gorbachev is a very controversial man. Again, they tried to murder me when he was in power. You all remember huge rally in DC. They arrested us with our 9-month-old daughter. And Laura, somebody said in the film, I really do believe that seeing that rally in December on a cold day, 250,000 people marching for Soviet Jews they never met. He saw what a free society is capable of. And exactly what Sasha said also. Yes, the Star Wars and the price of oil bankrupted Soviet Union. But unlike many other Soviet leaders, Gorbachev cared that people would starve. If you know, Golodomor in Kyiv, people died, millions and millions of people in Soviet Union died of starvation. They bankrupted all the farmers because they didn't want any capitalism seeds anywhere. He cared that people would starve. And it was like the house of cards. He started letting Refuseniks go, and then Soviet Jews go, and the house of cards just fell apart. And the fact would now say former Soviet Union would be unimaginable.
He did mention that all these smart people are leaving and the brain drain. I remember he mentioned that in the interview. And it was interesting to have, just with the people I interviewed, different opinions about him. When we interviewed George Shultz, he said that he kept trying to say to him, the information age is coming and you're not going to be able to stop this. You have to change your your way of thinking. On the other hand, I remember interviewing, I think it was Roald Zelichenok, who told me, I have a book here of hundreds of names, people who died in refusal under Gorbachev. So there's a very mixed, feeling about him. But I think you're right. I think he was open, unlike any other leader, to seeing what was really happening and realizing that things needed to change. So
I think all
I
the
do
other
think-
Soviet leaders, we can't call them leaders, they were dictators. I think he was the first one, at least in some sense, was a leader to do something different.
But it's very metaphorical, which is fun to put in a film. Holding people in and not letting them out is what the wall was doing, right? So
It was actually not his idea. If we read the minutes of the Politburo, yeah, it's the same we can find said by Brezhnev. Let's keep specialists and allow hairdressers to go. This was or something like this in this year. So it was an old idea, yes.
That is all very metaphorical, holding people in, not letting them go. We're at 11 o'clock. We want to let you go to the bathroom, get some food. Please join me in thanking our panel, the cream of the cream.